Well, yes. Since I was very young, really young, I loved I was from a rural area in southern New Jersey and not very sophisticated. And I learned a lot about Paris through 50s Vogue magazines. And I loved the fashion, all the great fashion houses. And then I loved the architecture, pictures of Paris. And then as I got a little older, appreciating, by the time I was 12, all of the art that came out of Paris, and the Cubists and the Impressionists and on, Delacroix, whoever came in. And then French literature. I started reading Rimbaud when I was 15 or 16, and Nerval, and they were my favorites, Laforge, and I really love this period, the French symbolist period of poetry, and then film. Then it was, Bresson and Godard, and so it was each French photographers, but the culture of France, the architecture of France, the atmosphere, and so when I was 20, I saved for a year and got a cargo plane to Iceland, 13 hours, and then another plane to Luxembourg, and then got a train to Paris. So it was the first European country first real airplane ride I had at 20 years old. So since Paris, in the first place I deeply remember is the Saint-Germain church and the little garden that has the Picasso's head of Dora Maar. It's a tribute to Apollinaire. So that was one of the first things I saw when I came to Paris. And ever since then, we've had a love affair. No, it's not so much people, because I'm a very solitary traveler, and sometimes people come up to me, but it's the idea that literature is everywhere in Paris. It's not like that in America. Just small pockets. We have special places, but you walk down the street and there's a little garden and there's a statue of Voltaire. And then you go into the Luxembourg Gardens or somewhere and you see a statue of Baudelaire, or the head of Baudelaire, or you see a statue of Balzac. Everywhere is a street, all the streets and all the plaques. So a person like myself, beguiled by literature, there's literature everywhere, history everywhere. Look at this garden where we are in Gallimard. In that garden, Camus was smoking cigarettes, and Mishima was sitting in a chair, and Nabokov was over here, and I mean, all of these in their closets are letters, many, many letters from Proust. There's history everywhere, but not, it's a history that you can love. I mean, there's history of war everywhere. There's history of sorrow everywhere, but, sometimes it's so nice to be able to have history around you that is just more like a dream, something more positive, or something that that is inspirational, because I'm a romantic, so it's a romantic city still. With any of its difficulties or flaws or problems, it has maintained that, which many of our great cities are losing. New York is losing it, London is losing it. You go to our great cities and you think they're overbuilding everywhere. There's you lose a sense of the atmosphere of both, a stirring present and and a stirring past, yeah. I just want to tell you one thing. One of my favorite people that I know in Paris, I don't know at all. I know he's from Bulgaria, and he seems homeless, but I've been seeing him for years. He's in the book. I don't say his name, but he's one of my friends here, but he speaks Bulgarian, and neither one of us speak any French, and I don't speak Bulgarian. He doesn't speak English, but I see him. You know, I'll see him, and he's reading a book, and maybe he needs some euros for food, and but for years I've seen him. So. And I meet many interesting people here. I just mean when I'm wandering aimlessly, I'm not seeking friends. I live a public life. I like just walking around, not knowing anyone, or just walking down a new street alone. I mean, I'm not analytical, so I don't think like that. These things just happen. Okay. Like the title of the book. I was writing. I didn't even have a book then. I was just writing on the train, writing in the hotel, writing in the garden where Neptune is. You must know this. Yes. And
I was born in the clinic in front of the garden.
So yes. I wrote some of this there in that garden. But I was with Alain, my friend Alain, and I see this headstone and the word. I mean, there's a picture of the headstone in here. Yeah. I thought the word was beautiful, and I said, "What is this word?" And he said, "It means devotion." And I thought, there's my title. But the things that you're saying, these are things for like you to write. I'm not analytical, and I just move. It's like I'm semi-fatalistic. I just go where fate takes me, and I don't really think about those kind of connections. The way I connect things are a little more abstract. But that doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means I don't think like that. Of course. Well, it's also something I learned from Hermann Hesse's Glass Bead Game. Because in the Glass Bead Game, which it's one of my favorite books, it's a game of interconnections that the players, through stepping stones or different, it could be musical notes or words or images, they keep expanding their... I suppose their consciousness without drugs. But I love this. I love all of these connections, and that's really what the book is about. I was supposed to be doing an essay on writing, which is because Yale. It was part of a prize. This book, and so my task was to write an essay on writing, but I thought, well, Virginia Woolf has written about writing. Many people have written about writing. Marguerite Duras wrote beautifully about writing. What can I say about writing? So I decided, instead of looking at all my notes, I thought instead of trying to explain writing, I'll just, if I put all of show my diary notes and show all the things, different impulses that become in the story. Like at La Fleur, they have this that we don't have, and I guess they make ham and eggs in a skillet, and they put the ham down and then the eggs, and it's perfectly round. And I'm looking at it, and I'm seeing like a pond, a skating pond, a perfectly round skating pond, looking at these eggs. So the skating pond of my heroine, Eugenia, really began with a plate of ham and eggs in Le Fleur. So you never know where you're going to get an important piece of inspiration. In fact, the spirals, if you go out in the garden over on this side, there's spirals that are etched into the stone, and they're in there too. I was thinking of imagining Nabokov looking at this spiral and thinking of the inside of a nautilus shell, and thinking of these people. What was Camus thinking looking at these spirals? What was he thinking as he's smoking a cigarette looking at that garden? Anyway, it's always interesting to me. I don't know. I mean, I don't, none of it is done. The only thing that was done purposely is in writing the story itself.
Yeah.
It's a work of fiction, so you have to have a plot. So, but often when I begin to write, I have no destination. Like in the book M Train, no destination. I had no real destination because I didn't know I was going to write this in Paris. I was only in Paris a couple weeks, and I wrote almost everything here was written in Paris, or in set, or on a train, and some when I visited the Camus family. It's all written in France, except for some editing that was in America. So, and a little piece in America. What I'm saying is, I don't know, I can't predict how certain things are going to find their way. You know, I had no plans to write about a skater. I've never skated in my life. I love skaters. I love watching the Olympic skaters, but I've never even worn skates. You know, I've never been on the ice in my life. I don't swim. I don't skate. But because I've always loved watching these skaters and the Russian skaters, I have a strong affinity for them. But I don't know anything about skating except what I learned watching the Olympics. But I didn't plan to write about a skater. I don't play chess. I don't know. I admire it, but I can't play chess. They're just things that, you know, fall into place. The book wrote itself. Even this strange story, I had no plan to write such a story. When I started writing it, it was going to be a different story. It was going to be a dialogue between, I think I said so, a very intelligent older man and a precocious young girl. And they would just be sparring. It was just going to be a piece that was all dialogue between these two people. But I thought, well, they have to meet. And before I knew it, it turned into something completely different. And by the end, I was like, oh my gosh, I've murdered two people. You know? But it wasn't a plan. Some things I've written, like when I wrote Just Kids, it was heavily outlined because it's nonfiction. I had to work on the chronology, make certain the chronology was as accurate as possible, to really think about how I was portraying all the people. It was a huge responsibility. But for me, fiction, or this other kind of writing I do, which I don't know what you call it, like M-Train writing, I don't really have so much responsibility. I just... It's a little like a wild pony. You have to rein it in a little, but you do let it run. Well, those things, again, are sort of alchemical. I can't always break them down, but I will say that why I put that in the beginning of the book was because when I think about my life, even though I was very small and I didn't understand what was happening, I think of that as my first creative impulse. The first time where I had more to say than what was said. I wanted to, it was my early hubris that I knew more. I could express, okay, swan, a beautiful word, but I saw it like, and then the swan is, so, but I was only 2-3 years old. I didn't have any tools, but I remembered it. And when I thought about it, that is me, is about as analytic as I can get. Is I analyze that moment, or I recognize that moment as my first memory of creative impulse, of wanting to say something more. And then by the time I was 7 or 8, I I decided I would be a writer. So in terms of how visual things, yes, sometimes they're very connective, maybe more connective than I think now that because I can see someone on the street, just a passerby, and that passerby, the way they walk or something in their face, can become a whole book. So it's, again, an alchemical experience. It's something, it lights up. It's like, I always think of it, like the pinball machine, you know. If you are playing pinball and you hit your goal, all the lights go doo 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 doo. Or the old metro stations. When I was 20, I don't know if it's you would look for some place and you'd press the button and the lights would go doo 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 to show you how to get to your destination. And that it's like a little series of stepping stones that light up. But it happens very fast. Well, there's two kinds of visions. I mean, there's concrete, you know, something, you see an image, a garden, a person, that triggers a poem or a thought. But there's also visionary, where you know, it's where it could be a blank canvas. You know, I can look at a white wall and see you know, like a scene like a Malay, a shepherd girl, you know, and weeping or something, and there's nothing in the room. So it's two kinds. There's visionary and vision, like William Blake, classic example of a visionary, because much of his things were things that he projected, or they were projections of his consciousness, or perhaps like Lewis Carroll, you know, reading Alice in Wonderland. He seems a real visionary to me, just, you know, all kinds of fanciful characters everywhere. But I think they're a little different, because, like I said, you can have a blank canvas and see many things, or you can go out in a crowded street and see something that, you know, sparks your imagination. Yes, and I mean, I think that some of it is, a lot of it has to do with mind. Because like when I look at Camus' manuscript, I'm not, in some parts of me, I'm thinking of him or thinking an image of him writing or smoking a cigarette. But what I'm really connecting with is his mind. And mental energy to me is eternal. I mean, we die physically, but part of my afterlife philosophy really is centered around consciousness or cerebral energy. And that's the kind of thing, as a performer, I don't know how it manifests in my photographs, but as a performer, for instance, it's a channeling. Yes, I find sometimes as I'm performing, I'm channeling the energy of the people, and so things come out a certain way. Sometimes when my friend Sam Shepard died, I could feel Sam a lot, and I would be channeling a certain thing that I know of him, and he would be present. I went through about a couple of months where I felt I was channeling Roberto Bolaño in all my performances. I would sing a song for him, but I could feel, not like he was standing there, but I could feel his mental energy. And that's just what I'm calling it, because that's what intellect, the mind and how the mind works, and interests me the most. I mean, of course, like anyone else, I'm attracted to beauty. Yes, it's nice to see a handsome man, a beautiful woman, but what it really attracts me the most to them is their mind and kindness. But mental energy is something that I'm very, since a child. My father was a factory worker, but he was highly intelligent and well-read. He just was sort of socialistic or whatever. He didn't like the idea of climbing above your fellow man. And so he didn't. And we were fairly poor when I was young, except we had a very rich life in terms of books, his sharing his thoughts and his comprehension and understanding of things. And I came to admire that very early in life. And even when I was young and looking at Irving Penn's photographs of like maybe models or his wife wearing the fashion houses, Dior or something, and looking at these clothes, I wasn't just looking at, oh, they look so beautiful, and oh, I'd like to have that. There was an intelligence in these clothes, and, you know, the high artists, whether it was in fashion or a garden or anything, I recognized that a very unique mind created these clothing. Because I would look at how the people dressed in my neighborhood, or when I was a kid, a lot of people bought their clothes out of a Sears catalog. It's like the lowest common denominator. You know, there's a house dress and you order your dress and everybody's got one. And I looked at those and they seemed like it was just like a child drawing, but you would look at the cut of a peplum or a corniced hat or something. And so, I don't know if I'm going off the track, but what I'm interested in is not bringing the dead alive or anything, but to somehow access the energy that they worked from, and perhaps it can help enhance your own or inform your own. And I don't know if that answers your question. Yes. But it's also mental. It's like, because it's life in a certain way, but it's not. There is the everyday business of life that we all commit, that we all have to work with. You know, raising our children, or baking bread, or cleaning, washing the floors, or going to work. But I'm talking also about another kind of life, the interior life, which probably interests me the most. Yes, well, the reason I mean, devotion, when Alain said, it means devotion, I saw this word, I was drawn to this word, and when he said devotion, I thought this is perfect, because it speaks of everything in the book. Is like my devotion to the discipline of writing, which takes a lot of work and a lot of sacrifice, and Eugenia's devotion to her craft, her discipline, skating, the strange physical devotion that her and her Alexandra have for each other, the devotion that the trainer has for Eugenia, that Catherine Camus had for her father. You know, I mean, there's everything in there. There's devotion everywhere. My devotion to Paris, you know, my and to Paris, the culture of Paris, you know, whether it's the culture of the past or present culture. You know, it's like, for instance, it's very nice for me to be able to look forward to a new Patrick Modiano book. I just read one, because I have to wait for a translation. So, but it's nice to have a new writer. Not only a writer, I mean, new relatively new, a writer who is living, because almost everybody I love is either died or they're retiring or they're quite old. So it's nice to have someone my age. Even he's about my age, so it's nice. I don't know him, but I can feel a kinship roaming around the streets, and him trying to solve this interior mystery of Paris. I mean, that's what writers do. We're all detectives in a certain way, and we're detectives trying to solve what we're going to do. I mean, you start writing, and unless you're the kind of writer that has everything mapped out, I never know where I'm going. It's interesting. I think, where am I going now? What am I up to here? What's going to happen? I pay attention to dreams, and also I glean from them. Sometimes I'll write, and part of what I'm writing is imagination. Part of it I've taken from a dream, and part of it I'm taking from an actual something that has happened. And that's what I wanted to show in this book. Just by chance, I'm in my hotel, I wake up and I'm watching this little Russian skater, and she's exquisite, but not beautiful, not in that way, but her interior world mixed with her athleticism is exquisite. And I was reading Simone Weil, and I started thinking, here's two prodigies. You have an athletic prodigy, and you have, a cerebral prodigy. And what if you had a character that was both, that was equally athletic and brilliant, which is rare. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it is on the rarer side. And so that she could be a chess master or a mathematician or a scientist, but she chose ice skating, but she wanted to bring all those components and do something new, like an artist. She was an artist. She wanted to skate in a way that no one had seen, not just for competition or to win a medal, but to do something that would just astonish people. And that's what artists are trying to do. It's what a writer tries to do, a painter. I think it's in Orphy, the Cocteau movie, like the retelling of the Orpheus myth, but it's through this poet, and it begins in the Café des Artistes. It's in Paris, and they're all in the cafe. But in any event, he's an older poet, and he's seeking inspiration, and someone's telling him that he's falling along the wayside, and he's going, well, what do you want? What do you want out of me? And the guy says, astonish us, which is, and I saw that, and I was like 17, 18 years old, and I went, whoa, that's what we have to do, that's our task. Not just writing a good poem, an academic poem, the perfect poem, or the perfect painting. You have to infuse something else into it that just astonishes people. You have to, stand in front of a Manet, or stand in front of, a Delacroix, or stand in front of a Jackson Pollock and just be going, holy shit, and not even knowing why. Well, I think she's like a metaphor, like I said, for the artist, She's trying to take all of these things that she knows, mathematics, chess, desire, all the things that and rein them in, like you rein in a horse. She's reining them in to to put it all, put all these ingredients together and create something that no one has seen. To do a routine, and for instance, that's why the Russian skaters are so great. Although there was a beautiful Korean skater, but the Russian skaters are great because they have all the history of literature and music that they understand, and they'll interpret Madame Bovary, or they'll interpret their interpretations of things are both classical, literary, and modern. They're unique. And this new girl that I saw, they're not even sometimes the most perfect technically. They just go further in how they present a program. So she's like, again, I'm sorry, but she's a metaphor for the artist. Yes. Yeah. Could be me when I was young, although I was not a prodigy, but it's those impulses to take all of these things and to do something no one has seen. I remember that William Burroughs said that to me. We were talking about what is an artist. And he says an artist is someone who sees what others do not. Not only sees what others do not, but then acts upon it and makes it to be seen. And it becomes almost a spiritual experience. Like Jesus saying, those who hear will hear, and those who see will see. Because he had something very unique to express. He expressed something very unique. And so artists express something unique, and sometimes the people are slow. They'll slash, think of what they did, slashing Seurat's, or, cutting, a Manet or something because it was too shocking, or, being disgusted by a Jackson Pollock painting, or Cubism, And then time goes by, and they finally see it, and they, it's almost like it's a transporting experience.